really not that good. So maybe those people want to switch to, like you say, more independent studying on their own. What are some ways, what are some of the first things that they should start to do?
Okay, good question. So the first thing is to set yourself some goals and plan how you're going to achieve those goals. Okay. So, say to yourself, okay, well, why have I not got to where I want to be at this stage? And kind of reflect a bit as well, because goals aren't just about the future, it's about the past. It's about thinking why you haven't done this yet, if it's been something you've wanted to do for a long time, in particular. So maybe you haven't yet got to where you want to be, because in the class there's 20, 30 of you, and you only get the chance to speak once every 6 weeks, let's say, right? Because there's so many people for the teacher to get around. So you think, okay, well, so I need to speak more then, perhaps. That's something I could try. And when you're thinking of these things as well, don't feel like, well, I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I have to do that. And almost, writing them in stone, that's not the point of the exercise. The point is to think, okay, well, I haven't done that yet. So maybe if I try speaking more, that could be something. And just write it down, almost, in pencil, this idea of, I'm going to try this thing, but I'm not going to say, this is the way I'm going to learn this language, because that puts a lot of pressure on it. And if it doesn't work for you, then you're going to begin to feel that same sort of frustration of like, I'm still not learning this language, even on my own, right? So write down a few ideas of perhaps what's been missing, perhaps what you haven't yet done that could work for you.
And that those would be kind of skills-based things, I'm guessing. So you're talking about like maybe lack of speaking. I think if you asked a lot of learners who've been to class, like, what haven't you done? If it's Spanish, for example, they say, well, we haven't done the past tense or the subjunctive. So people tend to default to those kinds of ways of thinking, right? But it sounds like you're talking more about like skills, like conversation is that right?
Yeah, I think also like that idea of like, well, we haven't yet done past tense. If you're getting to the stage where you want to talk about that, but you don't know how to, then you can write that down as well.
Okay.
So things that you haven't done. But I think I am thinking more about the skills and techniques, like the study techniques that you haven't tried more so. Because the bits themselves, like the grammar subjects and the vocabulary topics, that kind of stuff, you can do at any stage, and you can learn in various different ways. So if you find a way from experimenting with these styles and these different skills and techniques that works, then you can apply that to those sort of grammar topics and those vocab chunks. So yeah, that's what I'd say. Yeah.
So what are, like, you were talking about different study techniques people can try. What are some like your favorite go-to ones which you find? And I guess this is going to be different for everyone, but like you said, it's a case of experimenting, finding what works, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So this past year, I haven't done much language learning. Okay. Hands up. I've been a little bit busy. But yeah, like things that really worked for me when I was in Paraguay and when I was sort of more actively learning Guarani than I have been for the past few months, one thing that I loved is that I had a notebook by the side of my bed. And every night I would fill a 1 page, and it was a really simple, it's a big notebook, but it only has like 13 lines on each page. So I would write 13, unlucky for some, but 13 sentences each night. And I wouldn't look in a dictionary. I wouldn't think, I don't know that word. How can, I wouldn't like get stuck on a roadblock. I would just write what I could write. So it doesn't matter if there's a repeat of like, I have a cat or something, that simple. If my brain was stuck and I'm thinking, what can I write? Well, I know I can write, I have a cat. So let me go, and I'd add that one and I'd write my sentences. And that I loved. That was a really good way to get writing in as well, because we often leave writing out. We kind of think, it's not useful. I focused on speaking, but it can be a really good way to sort of solidify our knowledge to help with speaking as well. Because when we're speaking is two things. It's often, unless we're recording like now, it's temporary and it's instant.
Yep.
So there's pluses and negatives to that. The idea of like, it's temporary, so if I make a mistake, I can sort of gloss over it. But it's instant, so I don't have a chance to think about those mistakes. So I'm going to make more mistakes. Whereas with writing, it's more permanent and it's not as instant. You have that chance to think and to reflect on what you want to do. So by giving yourself that chance to produce the language in a way that's not as instant, it can help you to sort of solidify things to then improve your speaking later down the line.
Yeah.
So I found that to be really useful. I love like vocabulary acquisition and just learning new words all the time is a really, really good habit to get into for language learning, because we feel like, okay, so as a beginner, I need to learn all these words, then I need to put them into sentences, and then I'll just learn grammar stuff, and all of a sudden I'll be, it will just happen. But actually, vocab, there's just millions and not millions, maybe thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of words, right? so many words that you're never going to learn all of them. So you can just keep learning. So keep learning vocabulary, whatever level you're at. Keep doing it. So find something that works for you. For me, it's Memrise. I love Memrise. I think it's great. You can download it offline. You can make your own courses. For some people, Anki, which does more or less the same thing. And then it could just be as simple as classic kind of paper flashcards or a little vocab notebook. Whatever works for you, keep learning vocabulary, because you never know when it's going to come in useful. So keep learning vocabulary. Try and get into a regular, and it doesn't matter so much if the writing is like in a paper notebook at night by the side of your bed, just a regular writing habit of some kind, even if it's writing sentences on your phone in your notes app while you're waiting for the kettle to boil or something, right? And just making it regular. With those things that fit in to your life around. And then, you've then making time then for your sort of study time of the course book that you might be working through, and engaging and kind of getting into the language as much as possible. So like listening to songs, finding music, finding TV shows. We're so lucky nowadays. It's so much easier than in the past. With Netflix, you can just type in Spanish. Oh, okay, here we go. Yeah. And find something, even something in English with subtitles. You can dub things, so many options there. So, I think there's a few ideas to get people started there.
So kind of question of exposing yourself as much to the language as possible.
Yes, but not necessarily just relying on that. So exposing yourself as much as possible, but not sitting back then and thinking, well, I'm listening, so it's going to seep in. Because that's the same scenario as when we talked about having the book on the shelf.
Yeah, it's kind of like those subliminal courses, which I think were sort of popular in the 80s or whatever. The idea that you can literally learn a language in your sleep. They never took off, but I don't think they really worked.
Although, having said that, when I did my A-levels in French and Spanish, I did record myself. And I had this huge MP3 player at the time. MP3 players were brand new. It was massive. And I would record myself reading out my vocab lists and listen to it when I went to bed, and just on repeat all night. I would also do other stuff. I wouldn't just do that and think, that's going to be it. But I would write them down in all my free lessons. I'd be writing down all the vocab. And but yeah, I did do that. I did listen at night. And I think it kind of worked alongside other stuff. That's the key to any of these quick fix things. If anything says you will be amazing in 2 weeks, you'll be fluent, it's if you do lots of other stuff as well as this.
It comes with a warning, definitely.
Exactly.
So I want to go back to you mentioned goals and planning. I know this is kind of a big focus of yours. When you're studying on your own independently, I think this is more important because you've got no one to do this for you. How do you actually plan out, your route to learning a language, particularly given those unknown unknowns like we talked about before?
So if I was starting from scratch?
That's a good example. Or maybe actually, I think there's a lot of people in that situation who get to a pre-intermediate stage and reach what I call the hump or the gap. I don't know. There's all sorts of terminology for it, but basically to where you think I've covered the basics, but I still can't understand native Spanish, French, whatever, and my conversation is still rubbish. So, but whatever sort of level, let's take a look at that level, I guess. Okay.
So, I'm gonna try and picture myself in the situation to make it easier to work through. So, let's say German, for example. I studied for a couple of years. I haven't studied for a while. I want to kind of pick this back up again. So, I've got this rusty, hazy thing going on. Which I think is quite common, and like you say, you did French at school and it's maybe there's something still there. It's that, right? Okay, so what I would say in terms of planning and goals is ask yourself, start by asking yourself why again. So think, okay, why do I want to do this? Okay, that's why. What do I want to do? So the next question after you've established why you want to learn that language is what. So you're saying to yourself, well, what do I want to do with this? What do I actually want to be able to do? Do you want to be able to go to Germany and be able to order a meal in a restaurant and get your reservation in the hotel, and do all of those sort of basic travel level of things completely in German? Or do you want to go and live in Germany and study a different topic in that language, or do you want to be able to like be a professor at that university? Because all of those different, and that's just 3 options, it's infinite options of what it could be that you want to do with the language. All of those are going to have different ways to get there, different paths. So you kind of start with that. And then the way that I do this, I like to call it onion goals. Because like in Shrek, like onions have layers, right? So you start in the middle. And then you ask yourself, okay, how? How am I going to get there? So let's say that my goal is, we'll keep it nice and simple. It's just that I want to be able to go to Germany for a 2-week holiday and have basic conversations with the waiter about more than the food. I want to say to him, oh, it's a nice day today. And oh, do you know if there's any nice museums around here? Just some general chit chat with the waiter in the restaurant. So be as specific as you can with it as well, because that will help. Then say, okay, how am I going to do this? Well, I need to learn, obviously. Well, how are you going to learn? You're just asking yourself how every single time, like a nagging voice in your head. Okay, so I need to think about where I'm going to find these words, because it's the bits, that I don't know, kind of gap there. So, okay, so probably not necessarily that big box at the top that says you're going to be C2 fluent. Probably more so maybe in the travel section of the bookshop where they've got the phrase books, something like that would be more useful. So you say, okay, I'm going to buy a phrase book, and then say, okay, well, how are you going to make that happen? I'm going to go to Waterstones. Well, how are you going to make that happen? I'm going to put it in my diary to go first thing Saturday morning, right? And that's your first step. Then it sounds ridiculous, but if we just think, I'm going to buy a phrase book, and we're not actually saying to ourselves, okay, well, when are you actually going to do this? You're really being as specific as possible. You go through those early stages, and then you think about that big goal again. So you come back to that and you're saying, right, I want to go, I want to travel, I want to chat with the waiters about stuff. Okay, I've got my phrase book. Well, how are you going to use that phrase book? Okay, let me think about it. And you're just constantly asking yourself how, and you're layering that out. And then that will give you this clear path of exactly what you need to do, completely broken down, even to the point as, the example of buying the phrase book, the point of putting it in your calendar to go to the shop to buy the phrase book. And it's so simple then when you see that, you think, well, that's easy, I can do that. But if we just say, I'm going to learn, it's like this big thing of like, especially when we're on our own. Taking
a big, audacious goal and breaking it into manageable chunks.
That's exactly it. You're breaking it down, and every step of the way, if you get to one of those smaller steps and it's like, I'm stumped on that, you can break that down. You can just keep taking them and sort of these infinite like goals. You don't want to go crazy. This is the other thing as well with planning and with goal setting for language learning. It's quite fun. I quite like it. It's sort of, you're thinking about like improving yourself as a person in a way, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But you don't want to get obsessed and get stuck in that planning phase also, because then the danger is that you just stay there and you write about all these amazing things you're going to do, but you're not actually doing them. If you're planning to learn a language, you're not learning that language. Yeah, you're laying yourself some solid foundations to help you do it. But if you're doing that for too long, then nothing's going to happen, and you won't be able to go and speak to the waiter.
Yeah.
So that's the other key thing to remember when it comes to the goals and planning on your own.
So start with why, then go to what, and then finally how, and get specific with each of those.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And then keep asking yourself how.
Keep asking yourself how. And then you can... I think we mentioned before around obviously around study techniques, and you talked about a few different things you do. Do you look to set yourself like a habit or like a daily goal of I'm doing this each day, or what do you do from there? I guess is the next question.
So that would be like the goal stage, and then after that is more like the planning, the more sort of logistical side of it all, right? So I then have established, okay, well, this is what I need to do to get to that goal that I have. How am I going to make sure that happens? And you may have some of the answers in that planning stage, like we said, well, I'm going to put it in my calendar first thing Saturday morning to go to the bookshop, right? That's fine. But then you add that to your kind of plan, to your calendar. I have a free planner on my blog every month, if that's helpful. I can share the link in the show notes.
We'll put that in.
Yeah, and so basically you're then looking at it sort of week by week, or well, month by month, And then week by week and then day by day, you're just saying, okay, dun, dun, dun. So you start off with a sort of wider picture and you think, okay, well, by that week, I want to be able to do this much. End of that week, I want to have learned how to use the verb to want. End of that week, I want to have increased my food vocabulary so I can read the menu a lot better without having to resort to asking for the English menu, right? And so you're setting yourself